Ninth and O, welcome to Devotionables, brief devotions for busy people. My name is Adam Howell, and I'm glad to join you today. We're going to be looking at the beginning of the Book of Ruth, and I want to take just a second and read this, but then we're going to have to back up a little bit in the Book of Judges to pick up some of this context. It's not often something that we do where we read between books, but I want to show you how this kind of fits together with the Book of Ruth. So at the beginning of the Book of Ruth, we get this: in these days, or in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah, listen to that word, Bethlehem in Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of 2 of his sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. Now, it's as far as we're going to go, and you might think we haven't gotten very far, but the thing I want you to hone in on is this idea of Bethlehem in Judah. Now, if we back up in the book of Judges, okay, now the reason I'm doing this is because Ruth says, in the days when the judges ruled. So you kind of go, okay, that's where this story is set. Let's go see what was happening in the book of Judges. If we move backwards to the book of Judges, we're going to pick up in Judges 17, but we remember that Samson was the last judge in Judges 16. So in Judges 17, we kind of move into this new little piece of the narrative where you kind of get this point of if things are getting as bad as they could get. And if you're familiar with Judges 19, the wheels come off with the Levite and his concubine. Terrible story there. But in Judges 17, verse 7, we get this: now there was a young man of Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite. And we hear all of these things that are happening in the book of Judges around the hill country of Ephraim. Chapter 17, verse 1, there was a man of the hill country of Ephraim. The man from Bethlehem in Judah sojourned to the hill country of Ephraim. You get all of these little comments about Bethlehem and Judah and Benjamin and Ephraim, and all of this happening in the midst of the turmoil of Judges 17 through the end of the book. Now, when we come to the end of the book of Judges, chapter 21, verse 25, follow me here, you get, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. So you come to the book of Judges around the context of this Bethlehem of Judah, and you realize the very thing we need to correct all of this corruption is a king. It's a king. That's who we need. We need a king. So you get to the book of Judges, you get to the book of Ruth next, and it's in the same time period. There was a famine, but there was a man from Bethlehem in Judah. And here's what happens as you're kind of reading through this narrative in the English. And we often don't do this because we get to the end of the book of Judges and we say, check mark, Bible reading time done. But Ruth is connected to it, and it's connected in this way. A man from Bethlehem in Judah. Think back in your mind. I've heard that before. Where have I heard that before? I heard that in Judges 17. Things didn't go well with Judges 17, and you come to the book of Ruth, and if you don't know the story, you kind of say, all right, this is either going to be more of the problem, or God is introducing a fix. And for those of you who are familiar with the book of Ruth, you know that it ends with the genealogy leading to David, that king. Now, we know that David faltered, and he's not really that king, but in the Old Testament, he's the one who is picturing that king who would come. And so there's a couple things that I want you to take away from this as you see this bigger narrative leading into the book of Ruth, and then what we know about the book of Ruth is number one, this longing for the king that was lacking in the book of Judges. So as Israelites would read these books again and again and again, you leave the book of Judges thinking, where is that king who will fix this? And you get to the book of Ruth and you say, that king is coming. But we know Christ has come, and yet we are still longing for him to come too. So the same longing that the book of Judges produces, that's answered in the book of Ruth, is the same longing we ought to have for our king to come again. And so this reading that bigger storyboard allows us to feel that same longing for our King to come, Jesus Christ to come again. And then secondly, trusting that God is superintending redemptive acts throughout history, even in the most terrible circumstances. You read the book of Judges related to these places, hill country of Ephraim, the Bethlehem of Judah, and you just wonder, how is this going to be fixed? These are terrible circumstances, and yet when we come to the book of Ruth and we see in that same time period, God is preserving a faithful family who were also from that same area, and through them He's going to bring about His king, David, who is the picture of our Savior, Christ. God is still working even in terrible circumstances, and it's so hard for us to see that in the middle of the circumstance. Something like this, we can step back, we can see big picture of God's acts over time, and we can be reminded that God is indeed still working even in those terrible circumstances. I hope that's encouraging to you today and that the Lord is with you. Be encouraged. Long for Christ and look forward to the day that He will return, and know that God is still at work even in those difficult circumstances.